to Michigan Football at the Voice of College Football. I am one of your post-game hosts and weekly contributors, Desmond, here with my partner Dre, and we will be having Mark Rogers joining us a little bit later. Before we get going, please like and subscribe. Share the video out on social media. It helps grow the channel. Also, join Mark's main channel, the Voice of College Football. Join his Discord where you can talk not only college football, but also NFL football 24/7, 365, as we all hope for the Seahawks to lose and Lions win so we can get in the playoffs. So, anywho,
Like how you do that in there.
Dre, how is it going, my friend? It's been a couple days. Saturday was the game.
Right.
It is now Wednesday. How are you feeling? Anything different, better, worse? Where you at?
Well, you know, a mix of emotions. I mean, part of it's due to the game, and then part of it's due to something that we're going to get into at some point regarding the head coach and his continuous circus that he does every freaking off season. But um, you know, no, Desmond, it's a disappointment too. What was a really good year. There's no way if you're having a balanced approach to it that you can say, winning the Big Ten 2 years in a row, beating Ohio State 2 years in a row, where it took so long to get there, we was climbing for so long, um, that you can, call it a failure, right? I can't even get close to doing that. Maybe a slight disappointment, and I can only say that because of the opponent that you probably lost to because you still feel like you were the better team. Um, so it's a mix of emotions. By no means is it something to hang your head low, as a Michigan fan. Last 2 years you've proven that you're one of the top teams in the country. You are now, on the biggest stage. You have performed well, but you have proven that you're more than good enough to get there. And that there is something to be said about that. So you take a couple days, you let the emotions kind of die down a little bit. Of course, once the national championship game happens, you'll start to feel those emotions again. At least I will, because you're going to watch that game feeling like, man, we should be there, especially if somehow TCU pulls the upset. You feel like, man, maybe we could have won the whole thing, right? You'll really feel like a missed opportunity there. So that's kind of the gist of how I feel.
I think if TCU wins it all, I think that's going to make it really. I think that's going to change it. Like I don't think I
Oh, for
don't think
sure.
you'll feel the
Yeah.
same, as you do today. If you know chalk serves, I think Georgia's favored by double digits. But if Georgia just wins the game and it's what everybody expects, I think that won't be too bad. But if TCU somehow pulls a miracle upset, and I don't care how it looks, even if it looks
Right.
bad, I think
Right.
that'll change it quite a bit of the feeling
Oh,
of,
yeah.
oh my goodness, like no, this
We blew
was
it. Blew a
this
really
was
good
it.
opportunity.
And think of our continuous conversation throughout the year and the season of it's wide open this year. You know what I mean? Like this,
Right.
like yes, I think everyone agreed Georgia was the best team for most of it, but
Right.
Georgia wasn't the dominant team they were the previous year, like last year, right? That was
Right.
a machine of a team. Where this team, I think,
Right.
has shown some vulnerabilities, but we just looked at it with Michigan. Like this is the time to take advantage, and you got TCU as a 3 seed, and it just landed pretty favorable for Michigan. So it kind of stinks that they weren't able to, kind of put it all together against TCU. But yeah, I would agree with you. It's a really positive year. Um, it, a lot of good things. I mean, an undefeated regular season. You won the Big Ten again. Uh, you're in the college football playoff. This is now 2 years in a row. And you look at what you and Georgia are the only two teams in the last 2 years to get there, right? Both
Yeah.
years. So a
Yeah.
lot of a lot of good things. I think the tough part is just going to always be that TCU game, where because getting to a national championship is very hard,
For
and
sure.
we have seen even getting to the playoff for everybody is difficult.
Hmm.
So to have a favorable matchup is very difficult if you're not the absolute number one seed. And I think Michigan had a favorable matchup and unfortunately just didn't take advantage.
Yeah, it's one of those things where it just like anything, it just feels like a blown opportunity. Because fact of the matter is, in most years, there's a hierarchy in college football. You have your average teams, then you have your good teams, right? Teams are going to be anywhere from what, let's say 8 to 25, right? And then you have the seven, I'll say set 5 through 7, which are, you know, kind of mix up this pretender or potentially contender, right? You're trying to decide between if they're pretenders or contenders. And then you have, well, actually, I honestly do. I'll lop in 3 through 7. I'll say, are you trying to decide if they're pretenders or contenders? And then you have like your top two, which is normally in most years Alabama or Georgia, where it's like they're in their own class, right? Because of the depth, not only their starters, but their depth, right, of their talent. In which there tends to be a pretty good drop off between 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, right? So, um, and so on and so forth. There, this is she's apparent from the get go that it was a lot of, I would say, a lot more. I guess the word I'm looking for is what's the starts with a P.
Parody.
Help me out, Des. Parity. Thank you. There's a lot more parity with the quote unquote top teams in college football, where it seemed like, wow, Georgia doesn't seem like elite like they were last year. Alabama seems like they got chinks in the armor, right? Ohio State, from the very first game versus Notre Dame, and like, wow, they look okay, but they don't look like unbeatable, right? So you always feel like Michigan, you know what, maybe you have a chance to, take a step forward this year and win a playoff game, maybe more. And that trend and view continued throughout the year. Until you got to the actual playoffs, you're like, wow, they actually have a legitimate chance to win the whole thing. So from that standpoint, it's a blown opportunity because most years, yeah, you do have those distinct teams where it's like even a team like Michigan, which can be really good, probably doesn't have the high end talent with enough positions to probably compete to win the whole thing. So that hurts.
Yeah, it's just an odd situation. I because I don't think you can just take the game in a vacuum and just say, oh well, the end result you lost, like it is what it is type of thing. There was a lot of just self inflicted mistakes, and overall, like I said, when you look at Michigan, and we talked about it in the post game, they just never had any of these mistake filled or mistake riddled games where you just look at it and you just say, man, they just didn't have it today. Like you didn't have any games like that. You might argue the Illinois game, but I would still argue that your Heisman Trophy candidate running back, went out at halftime. So it's difficult. I think if it's the Georgia game from last year where they were just a better team, I don't think Michigan was quite ready to take that next step. You can live with that, but this game wasn't that. Like it wasn't just well, Michigan just didn't have it. It just you had mistakes, you had some poor play calling, um, and it's difficult because like I said, you didn't see this all year. Like no, you didn't have any games like this where you would come out and just say, "Man, they're lucky to get out of that thing." Like it was they played well, they were focused all year. So to have this against in the biggest stage when there is no tomorrow, gotta have it. That stinks to have it happen at this time at this juncture. I can't hear you, Dre.
Sorry about that. It's the uncharacteristic loss. This is, I think, is basically what you're saying. It'd be one thing if TCU came out and Max Duggan looked like a Heisman Trophy finalist, threw 4 touchdowns, ran for additional two. Just played the game of his life. Quentin Johnson went on, which he did. But like they just hitting on all cylinders, and Michigan's hitting on all cylinders, and somehow you got into a shootout and you lost at the last drive, right? Maybe you can live with that. Actually, you can live with that, but when you go into a game and you hurt yourself so much on so many different phases of the football too. On all different, blown assignments on defense, mistakes, turnovers on offense. I mean, just a total mess. Coaching just bad decision coaching in terms of play calling and stuff like that. I mean, just a total disaster. That's what really puts that bad taste in your mouth because the collective collapse, right? So, most balanced fans, I think, if you know your team's giving it their all and one of their best games and they come up short, you can live with that. But when it's a game like that, it's like, guys, what's going on? And also, you're going to now it's a trend of now Harbaugh's 0-6 in bowl games, and you have to ask yourself, during this layoff time, right? 3 or 4 weeks between the final regular season game and or conference game and the bowl games, what is going into the preparation that's leading to this discontinuous trend, where your team is coming out and not looking like themselves, right? Are you doing something different during that time period, or are you are you not preparing? Are you over preparing? Are you overthinking? That's where it starts to become a point of potential self-evaluation where what, maybe you're not doing something right, but hey, I don't think that's on his mind right now because he's clearly looking at other things besides self-evaluation as a Michigan football coach. So whatever, but we'll talk
Well,
about that soon.
what I would say is they're definitely not over preparing. That's not the problem. It's not that. Now,
You
under
sure, man?
preparing,
Or it's an
oh, yes,
arrogance? I
I'm
mean,
sure.
a Philly special, fourth and goal. I mean, that's not your identity. You haven't done it all year. Why are you doing that? Are you trying to? You're overthinking it. Hammering the football. Why are you
Yeah.
putting in Mullins? When it's first, not even on your 1 yard line. It's first and an inch line. Use your second best back. Or your best available back at Alvin Edwards, get behind that with the offensive line, or QB sneak or something. You know what I'm saying? Way more
The sneak,
high
the
percentage plays.
so I've seen a lot of, I mean, obviously these are the biggest games in college football that happened Saturday. So a lot of the national media talked about it, and they did talk about the calls of Roman Wilson being down on the inch yard line, and they're like, yeah, that's a bad call, but that's not a game changing call. The actual
No,
game changer is when you
it's a
fumble the
fumble
ball in the end zone. And I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Joel Klatt, but he just said, in a environment of what college football is today, in an environment where pushing the quarterback is now allowed, like why would you do anything else on the inch yard
because
line?
that's what
Like
Jimmy does. He's the same guy that does those stupid formations. We used to do it all the time with kicking PATs. It's just like, dude, like,
it's
it's
just
always just
with the
overthinking.
Bush push, right? We remember that was the USC and Notre Dame. It
Right,
wasn't legal then. It wasn't.
right.
It was not legal. Now it didn't get called, but nonetheless, it's like that stuff is legal now. So just why why just a lot of questions, but mainly being the two biggest questions: why not a QB sneak? And if you're gonna hand it to somebody, why not have it be probably the best running back in that playing in that game? Why wouldn't
Yeah.
it be him?
It's just
Why a linebacker? I think now I don't know if this is
converted
true,
linebacker.
but yeah, they said that number 20. I don't know who it
And
was,
that's not
but
to
he was a
diss,
linebacker
Mullins.
through Ohio State.
Right. And it's not
But
to diss Mullins, but it's just the fact of like it's just in terms of you look at your higher percentage uh plays and guys who have been more relied upon in those type of situations. Why was that even considered? Where it's like you're making the game harder than it has to be, right? And
you're
that's
being
why I
cute.
just
I
can't.
mean, to be frank, you're being cute. Like that's cute stuff. Like
Yeah,
let's do a
yeah.
fullback dive. A guy who doesn't really have carries on the season. Let's be cute. Like that's cute stuff. You know what I mean? And this is not like simple is good. Simple is good.
Or hey, your quarterback is pretty mobile. Maybe if you wanted to, you felt like it was too. Still, it's some of six. It's not even a yard, man. That's what's so frustrating. But it's like maybe if you was like worried about the defense becoming too, locked in, on that, you could have spread the field and have your quarterback do an RPO, which for some reason he just struggles to read or does not read and just hands it off, and it really make the defense have to really consider multiple options where it's not a lot of room to make a mistake. So I don't know, man. I don't want to adjudicate too much about what did wrong with the game, but at the end, overall, it's one of those things where it's a blown opportunity defensively. Jesse Minter's been fantastic all year. I don't know what went wrong, especially in the second half. How did you allow the best player on their team and Quentin Johnson, at least offensively, uh, get so many favorable matchups, right? Why couldn't you do with him what you did with uh, you know, um, Marvin Harrison
Harrison
Jr.?
Jr. Yep. Because he
Now,
defended
are they
him
different
pretty darn
receivers?
well.
Sure. They did an excellent job versus him. That once he had that one touchdown, they made an adjustment, and he was essentially not seen the whole day. Now, granted, now I know that it's a different dynamic in terms of how Max Duggan plays compared to CJ Stroud. That he likes to run, so maybe I don't know if that's part of it. But it's just it was very frustrating. It was very frustrating to see that defense perform the way they did.
Yeah, and I would, I mean, I honestly I would lean to some of that was the play call, like the scheme, like that drag route that he had that he took to the house. Like I just don't understand. Like for a team and a defense that rarely ran a bomb blitz cover zero, like why in that moment? You know what I mean? You're a good defense. To me, those types of things are things that defenses who can't hold up on all three levels do. Like it's
Yeah,
you, and you have the sliver of D coordinators of that's just what we're gonna do. We're just gonna blitz the heck out of you. But I wouldn't put Jesse Minter in that spot. And with that
right.
being said, I just don't understand why you go to that in a you know what I mean. Like it just does, especially when you have a receiver who is a concern. Like
Yeah,
why I just don't understand that. But like you said, just difficult. Not sure you. I don't know. It's tough. I feel bad for Michigan fans because that was a game that if you don't have mistakes from everybody within the Michigan program, you probably win. I mean, it was coaching stuff, it was player stuff, missed assignments, bad play calls. It just wasn't. I don't know. It wasn't great. Like I know some people say that they don't feel like Michigan came out ready to play. I'm not I'm not in that camp because I look at your first offensive drive and you drove down the field. You know what I mean? You had a 4th and 2, and at that point, that's on either your coach to make the call to kick the field goal, or that's also on your head coach to say, we're not running that play down here. No, no.
yeah. Well, I think the turnovers, just created such a momentum. It created. I mean, the pick six is, that was the first score of any team, right?
Yep.
It created such a emotional swing that it gave TCU a lot of who was already upset, came in with some extra motivation. It gave them some confidence early, and it put Michigan behind in the game very early, in which it was tougher for Michigan to get back control, in which they could make that game the type of game that they want to play. And essentially, they played right into TCU's hands, and played more of a Big 12 style type of football. Right, I mean, Donovan Edwards didn't really even get that many carries in the second half because Michigan was down so much, and you was trying to pick up more chunk yardage, and that's just not the way this offense has been running all year. You saw, what happens with JJ, either for not being prepared, as me and you, Des, talk about early in the year with his repetitions, or it was based on his own particular flaws. He's just not nearly as effective. In fact, maybe be a little bit detrimental to his team at times because of his indecision, right? And being loose with the football, not knowing when to throw it away, not knowing when to just take the yards in front of you, right? Just the little things that make that make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Trying to do a little too much. Maybe trying to make up, not only trying to help his team come back, but make up for his mistakes, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I thought you saw the perfect storm for a talented quarterback, but a guy who, let's be honest, quite frankly, hasn't been he hasn't had the ball in his hands a ton where he's had to make constant play after play after play.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I think Michigan finally got into a situation where they couldn't overcome those mistakes, partly due probably due to like the quality of opponent they were playing, right? Like you can't, maybe if you're playing in Illinois, you're playing in Iowa, you're able to get away with some of those things because those teams offense is not nearly as potent where they make you pay, and you can't afford those mistakes. Probably the only team on your schedule that could have done that was Ohio State, and you blitzed them, and then even though they were up going to halftime, you physically imposed your will, and you made that more of your football game than an Ohio State type game. So um, it's just, man, it's one of those unfortunate things that you just put yourself in a really bad position.
Yeah, and I don't know what the numbers would show, but I know they are very unfavorable for teams who throw a pick six in a game. Like your winning goes down drastically in when you do that, and you threw two of them. So that is a those are killers. Like they truly are. And I know those weren't the only two throws that JJ made, but
Do me a
they are
favor,
killers.
Des. Highlight this comment by blank name who is here every week. We really enjoy you being here, but I want to push back on this.
The one on the JJ.
Yeah, because you got to understand part of his mistakes. Some of them he didn't have pay the ultimate price because they were able to get the ball back, right? I recall a play in which he rolls out. He's trying to extend a play. He's rolling out to his left, way behind the line of scrimmage, and there's a defensive end or linebacker that's trailing him. As opposed to throwing the ball away, the guy comes from behind them, strips the ball out of his hand, and it rolls out of bounds for an extreme loss of yardage. That play could have turned to a touchdown. It could have turned to a turnover on downs right then and there. But I think it was like a 3rd and 19 or something like that, all because he did not get rid of the football. That's to me forcing something. You're trying to force something. You're trying to make something that's not there, and that continues to be. That was something that he showed earlier this year. And made mistakes. He made mistakes even in games they win, like Penn State, like that. Where at Maryland, right? You remember those tough hits, unnecessary hits he took against Maryland. So, blank name. That's not like something that was new that game. And him trying to do too much, right? If you don't think any of their interceptions were forced, okay. But from the angle that I was watching, the all 22 angle, the first interception, it was a pretty tight window. Is there a throw that he can make? Sure. But it was, and also a pretty good read by the safety or nickel. But still, that's a risky throw, and he tried and he got burned for it. And a second interception, there's no excuse for not seeing someone. That goes back to you reading. So just because he did
There's
not
only
see
11 guys on
somebody.
the field. There's only there's
Right, right, right,
only
right, right.
11 guys.
It's up to you as the
But
quarterback to read those things. And once again, it sounds like we're piling on him. By no means am I putting this whole game on JJ McCarthy, but he is the quarterback and he makes some critical mistakes. That has to be discussed, and that has to be something that he drastically improves on, um, for this team to go forward next year.
yeah, and I think especially with the last one, like you can't stare down your receiver. Like you cannot do that
No,
again, even against a good defense. Uh, you can't do that, and it just sounds like Blake Name is just going to make excuses for JJ no matter what. And that's fine.
he's
That's
here every
okay.
week though,
But
and normally he's not really. He's more on our side, especially in terms of he's a little bit more critical of Michigan too, and maybe that's just his guy, JJ. But and me, I think JJ still has a chance to be really good. The potential is there for the kid, but he has a lot to work on. He really
yeah,
does.
mainly his eyes. Like his eyes,
Mechanics,
he's got
his
to do better
decision
with his
making,
eyes.
his reading. For God's sakes, he never pulls the freaking football. It just seems like he's like, okay, where's Donovan? Where's Blake? Okay, hand it off. He's not even reading if the defensive end's crashing or not. It's like there's a lot
Do
that
you
he has to
think
work
do you think
on.
there's anything to, and I just thought of this as we were kind of talking. Do you think there's anything to, because think about it. The only football game you lost last year in the regular season was Michigan State. And he had
Yeah,
two fumbles in that game, lost one on a read option that he
one he got lucky, went out
probably
of
shouldn't
bounds
have
or
shouldn't have
recovered.
even kept on the
Right.
one that they lost. You think there's anything to that where he's just scarred of like, oh man, I need to just hand it off. I don't know.
I don't know. It's interesting. I mean, it's not like this is, you would think, I know he had to run that in high school, so this shouldn't be a new concept for him knowing how to do a read option. It just shouldn't be a new concept. I mean, you learn how to read that in high school. So of course that guy's a lot faster and bigger, but I don't know. I don't know why he's doing that. And then it's weird. I don't want to say the coach are telling him to do that because that would defeat the purpose of a read option. But then again, you watch something like, guys, excuse me if you hear my daughter in the background. She's excited like I am. But in the second half, he started to pull it. He pulled it more, and he was really effective with his legs. I don't know if that was the coach's staff saying, "Hey, it's time." So were you holding him back the whole time? I don't know, man. It's just a lot's going to be on the shoulders. And when you're the quarterback, you get criticized when you make mistakes, and you get praised when you do things well. And guys, I think it's okay to say, man, hey, this kid has to be a lot better because he can be better. It'd be one thing if he was capped out and, I felt like this is the best you're going to get. I think there is another level or two that JJ can get to, but because the raw ability is there. But he has to do a lot of fine tuning. And, Biggs, Mike said something about, was his first year as a full starter. Let me explain something, man. Once you are in the bowl game, you're no longer to me inexperienced. You've played an entire season. An entire season. You are a veteran there then at that point in time. That's not inexperience. And it's not like he didn't play at all last year. He got playing time last year. By the time that bowl game happened, he was an experienced quarterback. And I don't know. It's interesting, man. I don't know why you guys are getting so defensive, and it's not only here, but on Twitter too. People get really defensive when it comes to JJ because you can't be critical of him. It's like I'm not saying the kid should be gone. I like
Right.
him. I think he's very talented. Me and Des have spoken about, hey, I can't wait till the draft is here in Detroit because, maybe we get to go down and experience JJ McCarthy being drafted #1 overall. That's how we view his raw potential. So if you guys think that we're just bagging on him, saying he's untalented trash, that's not the case here. But best believe you can't excuse or overlook the mistakes he made because one, they are inexcusable, right? And two, they incredibly hurt the team in the biggest spot. And it's okay to say that and just hope that the kid improves upon it.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's bring on Mark as we take a look at one of our super chats. Steve Dace Burner, thank you so much for the super chat. Says Jim Harbaugh's postseason record is inexcusable. Now he's flirting with the NFL again. Failure of a
Oh,
season and the
perfect segue.
NFL crap is BS. Fire
Perfect segue.
Harbaugh. Woo, Steve Dace Burner account. Holy cow, that's strong. Mark, how we doing?
Did I hear possible segue to Jim Harbaugh flirting with the NFL again? I didn't miss anything. This is
You
tremendous.
did not. We basically have just been recapping the season and just kind of talking about the playoff game. And yeah, it actually is a perfect segue because Dre told me earlier today he wanted to definitely dive into this. So for those who don't know, and I'm sure everyone in this channel does know, but Jim Harbaugh and is it Jim Tepper? Dave Tepper. Dave Tepper, the owner of the Panthers, Carolina Panthers, have had a conversation. Or there's reports that it was not an interview, which is very odd because Tepper would, in fact, be someone who would either help or directly hire the head coach, and they currently have a head coaching vacancy. They have an interim head coach right now, but just gosh, a few weeks back we had Jim Harbaugh had quelled an NFL rumor pretty quickly. I think it was within a day or two that
Emphatically, actually. It was
yes, that I am going to be coaching Michigan Wolverines in 2023. So there was he absolutely squashed that one, and that doesn't seem to be the case with this rumor. Now, maybe some people would say, well, that this new rumor falls under the statute of limitations of his last statement of what he said, but at the end of the day, it's a new rumor, and you also had a conversation, so I don't know. But Mark, what are your thoughts on it?
What is the quote that Jim Harbaugh made after everything went down last year and he went back to Michigan for whatever reason? It was something
he's
about being
I'm
the coach for a long,
paraphrasing.
long time or something.
Right. No, to paraphrase Mark, he was saying that essentially he scratched that itch and he's kind of gone through the process and all that crap. And essentially he no longer has an interest in the NFL. He's here to stay. That was the paraphrasing of what he said, which
I
we
got it
all
right
pretty
here.
much
This will not be a reoccurring theme every year. Jim
okay.
Harbaugh told the Free Press.
Hmm.
This was a one-time thing. That
Yeah, so
was
much for that.
yep.
Yeah, these coaches need to be careful what they say, especially in this day and age. In the last 10 or 15 years of the internet, in particular, social media, everything gets kept. It's somewhere, easily found by Des right there. But even if it's been buried or deleted, somebody's got it. And so you just have to be careful. You can certainly think in the back of your mind, there's a possibility that there's going to be a job of interest. And if he's that unaware of himself and not that self-aware, to be caught up in the moment that much to think, okay, yeah, I made this commitment to Michigan, I never care about an NFL opening ever again, then he's either just saying what he needs to say in the moment and being partially deceitful, or he's not self-aware at all to know, hey, I'm a competitive guy. I've coached in this league. I coached in the Super Bowl. If I came this close and was this interested now, look at all the possibilities of things that could happen to the program that would be out of his control, that would cause him to want to go to the NFL in a year or 2 or 5 or 10, whatever the case might be. So just foolish that he states things like that. He could emphasize, I love Michigan, love being here. This is my school. That's what I'm going to tell you. But I believe he made a statement. Somebody quoted him and posted on Twitter that he thinks he will be the Michigan coach next year.
Thinks, right.
Yes.
A very indirect answer, a very roundabout answer, you
Very
know.
telling answer. He thinks, if I think I'm going to do something, usually, I don't know,
I think one day I'll be a millionaire. I really do. Like I think just like if I keep playing the lottery, one day I'm going to win, you know, be a millionaire. But no, it's just, you know, very, very, very frustrating because look, and I can't even respond to Gladiator for Freedom right now. I think I kind of see where you come from a Michigan standpoint. You kind of fall into the homer. Sorry, I put you there, Gladiator, but you're really looking like a big homer right now. You know, we can't say nothing negative about Michigan. So okay, thank you for saying who you are without saying it. But it's no other big time program has to deal with this on a year-to-year basis. No one.
Right.
Like, you know, and that's really frustrating. Saban doesn't do this every year at Alabama. Dabo doesn't do this every year with Clemson. You know, while Lincoln Riley was at Oklahoma, you don't have this every year. You know, no one else has to deal with this. Ryan Day doesn't do this every year with Ohio State. You know, like it's not fair to the university to have to deal with this uncertainty every off season where they since the time you've arrived to that campus, they've given you carte blanche to do anything you want. My apologies, guys. You guys hear the baby in the background,
Yeah.
but they give you carte blanche to do anything that you want, right? They give you a endless budget to get any assistant you want. They've allowed you to do so much. No one has approached you. You was never going to be fired, but it was a particular off season where it seemed like after you had a disaster in 2020 that you may have to earn that next extension. And that was rightfully so because you were 0-5 versus rivals. I mean, it's
Well, and
ridiculous that
also
Michigan
think
fans have to
about that
continue to go through
2020
this.
season. That's not. It wasn't just a like, oh man, we were 500. That was bad. That was a disaster of a season. I think it was what,
Right.
2-4, 2-5. Like, dude,
Yes.
that's not just a normal season. That was
Absolutely not.
awful. You know, like, so it's not as if it was just like, we had a tough year. You were 2-5. Like, that was atrocious. I don't know. I'm just at a loss. Honestly, I don't understand it. My thing is, to me, to have this much kind of back and forth of, you know, having this type of job, because let's also make it clear, like, it's not as if Jim Harbaugh is getting paid, you know, pennies, even in the coaching realm, in the coaching scale, right? We get it. These coaches make millions of dollars. It's crazy. But the thing is if I'm not mistaken, I read that I think he got $500,000 for winning the Big Ten title, and I believe another $500,000 for playing in a playoff game. I might be off on those, but nonetheless, I mean, it's not as if he's making, you know, the coaching equivalent of nothing. Like, he's still making a pretty hefty salary. So to me, it can't just be the money. So it's
It's not
gotta
the
be
money, Des.
coaching in the NFL. And if you want this so badly, like, you know what I mean? Like, just go and do it because seemingly this itch is never going to go away. Like,
No.
it's just never going to go away. And I do think there's a part of it that some of it is truly just rumors. But at this point, I mean, if you're having conversations with NFL owners, ones who have a head coaching vacancy, you're probably trying to get a job. Like, and if that's the case, because even for the most adamant Harbaugh defenders, even you have got to get tired of this every single year. I mean, every single year. Like, that's the interesting thing is like it is seriously every single year, and that is just wild.
So I will defend him on this point. Uh, there are the pros and cons and the good and bad of being in the position that he is. Uh, Des just outlined one of them that's obvious. He is one of the top, before the salary reduction, I know that he was like top 3 or 4, and I think they just reinstated him to where he was. So he's like a top 3 or 4 paid coach. So that's the benefit of being where you are and achieving to that point. But there's also the cons are that the 3 of us could be weighing 2 different jobs, and we don't have to answer to it. We don't have to go, to the media and make something up, or while we're holding off on what we're going to do. And I do understand how he could be, based on his career trajectory of had success in the NFL, didn't quite get that Super Bowl championship. He's at his school. He obviously loves Michigan, and he's knocking on the door of a championship. So I can understand an internal struggle there.
Yeah, I think the main thing, guys, is not. I don't care what he wants to do with his career. At the end of the day, it comes down to try to be straightforward. Enough of the games. To me, at this point, if you love the university where you say you do, you're putting the university in a tough bind, right? And what I really think he needs to do is, and this may never happen, is that he needs to find a way to either resign, take a step back. Maybe he just can't find the right job, right? I mean, do you need to take a step back, wait for the right job, and go to NFL? But this back and forth, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. It's not fair to the university, to the players that he's recruiting, the players that are on campus. It's not fair for anyone. And it's clear that this is just in him. It's never going to go away. Well, if that's the case, okay, Jim, do right by us, and help us find a successor, maybe under your staff or some other way, and go pursue what you want to do for the later half of your career, right? But I don't think it's just not right. It's just not right what he's doing. And I think it's setting the program up for a slide when he decides to leave. I think it's a matter, not a matter of if, a matter of when. And it's a totally different situation. But my fear is that you could see a MSU type slide when D'Antonio resigned for them. The program was in a bad state. He wasn't recruiting as well, not because he was looking to NFL, but clearly he was starting to check out in terms of being as motivated to build the program the way it needed to be built, getting the right players, making the right staff changes, right? You saw what happened to MSU after he left. It took them, it was inopportune timing, right? So I'm not saying that will happen to Michigan if Harbaugh decides to leave, but I just think you're setting that situation up by the way he's going about it.
Hey, Des, did you say where that report came from that he had a conversation with the Panthers owner? Because if it's just a conversation and they have yet to interview, they need to keep that under wraps. They need to do their best just to have a personal phone call or something. If it's truly not in the interview phase, then why get everybody riled up, and why?
Because that's what Mark. That's what he does. That's what Jimmy does.
See,
He's
I
done it.
wonder
He's
if,
done it at San Francisco. He does it everywhere. That's why he burns
well, think about
bridges.
it. Someone had put it in the chat that it's a negotiating tactic, because to me, this coming out would only, the weird part is it only helps and hurts Jim Harbaugh, because if you're going to stay, this hurts you, because it's like, man, he's once again flirting with the NFL. But if you plan to leave, then I guess it doesn't really matter. Like, you know what I mean? Like because if you're trying to make this as a bargaining chip of, to go back to Ward Manuel, who, I mean, literally had to be forced to give you any type of repercussion after that. I mean, Ward Manuel was forced to do that. Essentially, it came down to it. I feel confident in saying he did not want to do that. That it's like, man, I'm
Probably
kind of,
not.
stuck between a rock and a hard place. Like, so a guy who, to me, has clearly always shown that he's got your back. If you're just trying to essentially like strong arm him, saying, well, hey, listen, I got this offer from the NFL, blah blah blah, I need more money. I I really
I
don't
tell you
know.
what you do, Des. How about we don't play games? You know what you do now, Jimmy? This is the plus of winning. Just put those two Big Ten championship trophies on your desk and say, if you want this to continue, pay me what I'm worth. That's what you do. You don't have to play this game about, man, well, if I leave go to NFL, you have something tangible you can point to. And guys, you should be to hear the frustration in my voice. It's just it's just not necessary, right? It's not necessary. And why does it have to be Harbaugh? If it's such a normal type, if he isn't doing anything wrong, you this is just Michigan fans complaining. Now, how come other big time programs have to deal with this on a year to year basis? Answer that for me. I can be critical of the man and appreciate what he's done, right? I appreciate the turnaround the last 2 years. Make no mistake about it. But what I don't appreciate is the conundrum that you're putting this university in. And you're setting up a situation that you're not going to be to sustain this level of success. Because who are you bringing in terms of players? Why should they trust you, right? It seems to be, especially in today's football, it's like, well, it's a lot of mobility. Like I really I really don't think it's fair. And I understand some people are bringing up, well, be careful. 'Cause remember how Rich Rod and Brady Hoke were. You cannot operate in fear. And I said this, and Des, me and you echoed this sentiment the same back when Harbaugh, so before we joined the channel, but in our own conversations, we always echo that you cannot be afraid to make a change because of who you're going to get, right? Or who is next, or what if we go back? You are the University of Michigan. Figure it
Right.
out.
And that's what I was gonna
Figure it
say.
out.
You are the biggest brand in the world in college football, in college world, excuse me, college sports. The Black M is, I would argue, the biggest brand. So don't like, you just can't have it both ways. You can't on one side say we're Michigan, but then on the other side just say, well, we just can't get a good coach. Like, I don't know who we're gonna get. You should feel confident you can get just about, outside of two or three guys out there, anybody.
And
You
now
should
you've
feel
seen it can
confident
be
that,
done.
yes,
You,
yes,
you know,
LSU
n-
showed us it can be done. USC showed us it can be done. And what was USC
yes,
before
it can be
before
done.
this season? Like it
Right.
can be
You can
done.
have a quick turnaround. Right.
Yes, and you
Is
don't
it
need a
now? Is
turnaround.
it no? Right. You're already here. And now would it be some level of adjustment? Sure. I mean, because that coach, look, no one's Jim Harbaugh. Okay. Like no one really runs his offense the way he does. No one definitely doesn't have his personality. That's not necessarily a diss. I'm just saying he's a different guy. But fact of the matter is, you see that you can have success at Michigan. You see that. So that is very appealing. The University of Michigan job, if it opened up, it's a top 10 job. It's a top 10 job. And I'm being modest.
I was just
I'm
gonna
being
say,
modest to me,
I
in my
may
opinion.
argue higher than that.
Yeah,
It's
I
a
was going to
terrific
say,
job.
Fine.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're not being
Yeah. I'm being
biased,
very
right?
modest.
You're
I'm
actually
trying not
being
to be a hump.
conservative. You're being reasonable.
Right.
You're being very
Thank you.
reasonable.
Yeah. And I'm trying not to sound like a homer. So I'm like, oh, we got the number one, so it's just, um, I don't know, man. It's just like, don't operate. Speaking of fans right now, don't operate in fear. We don't have to kiss this guy's butt. The last 2 years, he's finally done what he was projected to do, right? What he was
Hmm.
paid top dollars to do. It took him a long time, but he's finally done it. So, okay, like, but I'm not going to kiss your butt. I'm not going to throw up a statue for you. If you want to leave, you want to keep playing this game here. I don't want to play no more, and you're going to have to make a decision. That's just it. I think it's time to do something or get off the pot.
Real quick, let me acknowledge these super chats. Steve Day's burner account is lighting it up right now. Thank you again. It says Harbaugh has essentially lied. He said himself that Sharon Moore is more than ready to be a head coach. Harbaugh is persona non grata and get out of here. And One Scoop John, thank you, says how many other colleges have a coach with such a high NFL winning percentage? Zero others. He got 49ers to a Super Bowl. That's at least part of the answer. Mark?
Yeah, I can't wait to. I'm going to check out your post game. I'm, of course, was busy doing what I do, but just to get your takes on the game and some of those coaching decisions in the game. But
Weren't great. The whole Philly special with your that.
I mean, look, man, it's one of those things where he outsmarted himself a lot. He got cute, which he did some of the bad parts of Jimmy in game, right? We've seen it over the years. Um, but that's besides the point. The fact of the matter is, look, you have, I think, restored your status in the game as one of the best coaches in the football coaching profession, right? I'll include college and NFL because look, that to that point, he's one of those rarities where he's had success both at the NFL and college level, right? This is not about if is it dumb or it'll be a bad idea for himself to go to NFL. I think he could be successful in NFL, even though I believe it's more of a younger man's coach game nowadays. The kind of trend of the game flies in the face of what he likes to do. But hey, I can absolutely understand him wanting to go back because he was, a bad first half away from winning in a Super Bowl, right? So it's very understandable, and it's understandable for a team to be interested in him. But at the same time, it's not about that. It's about how he's going about it, right? In a circus year to year. It's not like this is like something that we deal with every few years, guys. Like every 2 or 3 years, you know, Jimmy kind of gets the itch and he's kind of throwing it out there. This has been a year to year to year thing, right? Every time a coach job comes open, going back to when Andrew Luck was still playing, there's always like every offseason, hey, does Harbaugh want to reunite with Andrew Luck and Indy? Right? It's always remember there was rumors of was Ross going to want him in Miami at a certain point in time, right? It's always something. And I don't want to hear anything about, well, hey, teams call college coaches all the time. Now, how come you mostly hear about Jimmy? You never really hear about anybody else.
Yeah.
Either
One time I
he's
heard about
go
Lincoln
ahead,
was the Cowboys job. That
the
was
Dallas
about it.
Cowboys.
That
Yeah,
was
but
there
that
was a
was a
lot to that.
rarity.
Right.
Right. There was a lot of smoke to that. I understood it. Really good young team. And it's not the fact that you're putting those fielders out there. It's that it's this continuous circus. And now, to what Mark brought up earlier, you, and it's funny, Des. Me and you gave him credit, right? Because when he came out and made that emphatic statement, I will be coaching for Michigan 2023. We gave him credit because for the first time, we're like, wow, maybe he's finally learned his lesson to, you know what, let's not have any noise. We're having a really, really good year. Let's squash any potential speculation before we even get
Yeah.
to the offseason, right? It looked like he was doing it in a professional manner.
And just
Yet
early,
here we are
quick. It
again.
was it was like 24 to 48 hours, and that his quote was already out there, and I'm like, that is how you quell a rumor. Just like, no, listen, no, nope, squash it, be done with it, and move on. But I don't know. There seems to be merit to this, and the odd part is if I'm the Panthers, I'm keeping Steve Wilkes as my coach. The Las Vegas Raiders just tried this.
Well,
They
look,
had
man.
an
Yeah.
interim coach who had that team in the playoffs. Now, I don't think the Panthers can make it at this point, but
No, they're
nonetheless, the
eliminated.
last
They don't have a
month, the
quarterback
last
though.
6 weeks, they've been playing terrific.
Yeah.
So
Well,
it's just
that's a
listen,
whole nother
you
conversation. This
I,
whole, I'm with you.
it's
Trust
just
me.
odd, but
Mark, if you ever want to open up an NFL channel, me and Des would love to do it. And by all means, we'll
don't
take
think I
that.
haven't thought of it.
Yeah. But look, fact of the matter is, man, it's just, and I don't understand if you want to have sustained success with this program, how are the actions you're taking going to allow for that to happen? As the CEO, which you currently are, the CEO of this program, are you doing everything that you can and that you're supposed to do to make this program healthy and profitable and successful on the field? I say with an emphatic no to that. An emphatic no. So then he's not doing his job. He's not doing right by his job. And it's okay to say that, guys. You can separate it. And I don't know why a lot of fans can't do it. You can separate, and we said, and Mark, before you got here, just like in the post game, we've been battling with fellow Michigan fans talking about JJ's disaster performance. And every time we try to critique it, people want to just defend him, till the cows come home, and not like we're saying he's bad. No, he had a very bad day. But anyway, the point is that you can separate what a coach has done with his record compared to how he's handling a particular situation, a scenario that continues to happen. And there's nothing that should be defended by what he is doing. I'm sorry, it just shouldn't be.
Yeah, and someone had mentioned too that the whole Vikings, flirtation last year, that it potentially messed up last year's class. I'm not
Wasn't it on
sure.
signing day?
I believe so. Yeah, I
Now,
believe so.
granted, I'm sure like these kids have their minds made up, and I'm sure that wasn't the basis of their decision on that day. Hey, Jimmy's not on camp. He's interviewing. Yeah, I'm not going. Maybe, most likely, they kind of had their idea what they're going to do anyway. But it's just the optics
That
of it look
I
bad.
would definitely say that has an impact on it. Now, I'm not sure that was something that messed up the recruiting class, like because I don't remember hearing any like major flips of like, oh man, Michigan thought they were getting this kid and he's going to Clemson or anything like that. But I mean, it can't be helping. Like I don't think this helps. So that's the rough part of it where you just I just if you plan on staying, man, you're not doing yourself any favors. That's what I think. Especially when it comes to the recruiting class, it's just difficult because if you're telling me that whatever, if tomorrow Nick Saban retired, do you think all of the guys who've committed to Alabama up until this point that every single one of them are going to stay committed? Some will, but some won't. They're like, no,
Then it doesn't
I
even
came to
matter,
play for
Des.
Nick Saban. I came to
Right.
I came to campus to play in Nick Saban's system, whether whatever offense, defense. I came to play for Nick Saban, and I would imagine there'd be similar guys that feel that way about Michigan and Jim Harbaugh. Like I came here to play for Jim Harbaugh, the culture he's created. So you can't tell me this doesn't hurt.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, me personally, I've been telling you this for years. I'm not just being a prisoner of the moment. Like, I don't understand what any player sees in a direct conversation with Jim Harbaugh in terms of playing for him. I'm just being honest. That's just me. But I understand culture from what I'm not
You're
talking
also
university.
not 18 years old.
True. But I mean, just to block him and the culture and the recent success, that's more than enough. I'm just saying, like Jimmy himself. I don't Guys love him, I guess, but I don't see how that guy gets you to run through a brick wall. Maybe he's different in private, whatever. But um, it's just,
You love saying that and bring that up. You love it. I don't know why.
I mean,
Leave that man alone.
dude, we have a sample size with that Amazon series when they followed Michigan and he was talking about getting ice cream as a kid in front of the team. Like I'm like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? But anyway, and you can see the look on it. What made it I don't want to go on a tangent. What made it was like the look on the players' faces. They look just like we look. Like like
It was
anyway.
very odd.
But the point is, man, it's just it's one of those things where you just had a disappointing loss to what was a really good year, and you just would have liked to see some real momentum going into the off season and kind of like this real commitment to finding a way to get some more high end talent because I think that's something that we also are starting to see. I think it's number one is definitely bowl preparation. I think was causing this problem in the bowl season now because he's now on 6. But maybe it's also talent. Once you get off the bubble of the Big Ten, you see a different level of speed that we think we're Big Ten fast, but we're not Big 12 fast. We're not SEC fast. And maybe there needs to be some kind of commitment by him to figure out a way to get. You're never going to recruit like those other teams do and especially in their geographical areas. But maybe you can find a way to pull a few of those guys to give yourself more of a chance because like it's clear that maybe Michigan has potentially plateaued where they are, and there's no shame in that. I definitely take it over what it was before. Don't get it twisted. But if they have any kind of hopes to do more, like these players have said, to run it back for a natty, there may have to be more that transpires more than just bowl preparation. Maybe it has to be player acquisition as well via transfer portal or recruiting.
Which roster do you think will produce more NFL talent? How many guys off this Michigan roster will be playing in the NFL in 5 years versus the TCU roster? I got to think that the Michigan roster is going to be
Head and shoulders
yes.
more.
Probably,
Yep.
probably. And to be honest, I think I can't name anybody on the defense for TCU that I would automatically pencil in. I don't know their roster too well. But from Michigan, if I had to project, I mean, I don't think it's a ton of guys. Maybe
I think there's a decent amount.
okay. I
I think
projected
Junior
Will.
Colson will be there.
I
Mike
project Will
Morris,
Johnson.
Okie,
Will
Will
Johnson, if he
Johnson,
stays healthy,
DJ
yes.
Turner. R.J. Moten is probably an NFL player. I mean, you got a decent amount, and that's just defense, right? Your probably entire O line, Sands a guy is going to be there. Ronnie Bell's an NFL wide receiver. Loveland,
Maybe.
he's young, but he's probably a pro. Donovan Edwards, obviously. JJ. I mean, for TCU, you're probably talking Max Duggan. You're talking Quentin Johnson.
For sure. I like
Maybe
Dynamic
a couple guys
Miller.
on
Miller's
on
a really
on
good
defense.
back.
Yeah.
Uh, Miller was a really good back. He got hurt early, but he's pretty dynamic. I think he has legit
I
NFL future.
I think the difficult part is to get for Michigan to get to the next level, it's going to be in recruiting. Like you have to get a higher recruiting a talent base in order to get to that next level. And I know people are going to say, well, last 2 years we made it here without that. But I think until we see different, essentially you got to be in that top 6, top 7 for recruiting rankings year after year in order to get there. Like they in
It's
order to
hard
get
to
there, you've got to take that next step. But and
it's
here's the
hard to
difficult
sustain
part to
that level,
me.
Des.
I think it is recruiting is something you can outwork someone in. Like you can outwork another staff in recruiting, and and now it's not always going to work, but
Right.
you can
Some
absolutely outwork another staff. And well, that's not an issue. Money's definitely not an issue for Michigan
I'm
as
talking
far
about
as
NIL.
recruiting
Oh, the way
budget.
the NIL thing is going right now, I mean, I think, yeah, look, Michigan's all about transformative, not transactional type experiences. Um, but you know what, man? The problem is that it really doesn't matter what we say they need to do recruiting wise if your coach doesn't seem to be all in. That's what it comes back to. When your coach seems to
Yeah.
be not all in, it's hard to come up with any kind of recruiting strategy because the main part of that is a piece that's not firm, right? It
Hmm.
starts with the head coach. The head coach builds the staff. The staff, him and the staff in tandem develop a recruiting strategy, right? And the staff helps him carry it out. Well, where the main part of that doesn't seem like he's all in. I mean, man, I have a problem with that. I mean, Nick Saban's. I mean, he's recruiting right after the bowl game. Every year. I mean, he's right on it. Like to me, Jim just taking his time in which he's you know it seems to be right after the bowl game. He's thinking about other things, right? And I'm not talking about family time thing, well, being a well-adjusted human being. I'm talking about in terms of his profession. And man, I just it just it bothers me. I wish he would do it differently. I don't want to keep regurgitating the same talking point. But I just it gets irritating after a while, man. Because it's an every year thing, guys. If it was an every blue moon thing, I would not care. I think a coach is best. I mean, I think Matt Campbell at Iowa State probably missed the boat when he had a hot name in the game, both
Hmm.
collegiately and NFL. And he was either too loyal or too complacent. And now, he's not nearly of a. He's kind of lost that steam a little bit. PJ Fleck at a certain point, I think collegiately had a very hot name and probably stayed a little too long in Minnesota, right? Not saying that they're doing bad jobs where they are, but I'm talking about striking when the iron's hot and staying on that upward trajectory, right? So I would never get mad at a coach for doing their due diligence or finding ways to expand or change their career. However, I do care about how you go about it in terms of your current job and trying to be as straightforward as possible, especially when that particular university has done right by you for so long, right? So that's that's kind of my gist of it, but whatever.
Yeah. Steve Dace burner account. Thank you. Says Harbaugh will go down in history as the guy who killed the Philly special instead of bringing the championship to U of M. Shaking my head. What a legacy, Jimmy. that's that's tough. Slim says, "How do Dre and Des? How do you guys feel about Mike Hart? What do you think as far as head coach at Michigan? I'm assuming that's
Well,
what he means.
I mean, he doesn't have any head coaching experience, so I mean, so that is a possible concern. I mean, me as a Michigan fan, I love Mike Hart. He's one of my favorite Michigan players of all time, one of them. went through a very scary situation health wise this year at Indiana. So hopefully he's gotten that figured out, and and that's behind him. Not for his coaching career, but for his life. Uh, I think culturally, he makes a lot of sense. He is a Michigan man, if that's what you care about. Um, he's a running back, so I'm sure he values, the good old fashioned physical football. Um, he was definitely he's been well respected at two stops as a coach. He was very well respected at Indiana under Tom Allen. He's been very well respected here in Michigan. I mean, his running backs, Corum, Dalvin Evers, they all love him. They all love him. So he'll have the respect of the players. So internally, um, I like it. Um, but it could be a potential slow start for him. I can foresee, I can compare him to, and it's a little bit different because this guy didn't have the alma mater experience that at this particular school, um and all those things. But think about how Notre Dame started with Marcus Freeman. Kind of got off to a slower start, right? As it seemed like Marcus was trying to find his way. He was there the previous year, so the players knew him, well respected by the players. But it was an adjustment. It took them a while to kind of find their footing before they were able to uh, definitely playing a lot better football down the end of the second half of the year. So um, it's possible that Mike Hart, if he did take over, if Jim left, that it can have a rocky start, and we know how that went. A lot of people were on Marcus Freeman's case, especially after that loss to Marshall. So that could get rocky because fans get impatient. Hello, me being one of them. But do I think it's a bad idea? I don't. But it definitely has a pretty good amount of risk with it.
Yeah, I I love Mike Hart, and I think he is doing a terrific job here. I think he did a terrific job at Indiana, but and for as close as I think he probably was working with Jim, and seeing what it entails as a head coach, I mean, to not even have coordinator experience, I just not at Michigan. Like, there's just too much riding on you being the head coach and being successful. I wouldn't. We gotta get OC or something before we can get to a point of being the head coach at Michigan. But it's not a slight to him, but it's just that's me. If
That's a
I
lot of
if I am making the
responsibility.
decision,
That's a
yeah,
lot of responsibility to go from a running backs coach to um, being a head coach of a unit, of a football team. It's a little bit different. Um, as opposed to, if it's a lot different than if you're a coordinator. At least you're responsible for at least one half of the team, right? One half of how a team does it. You're involved in game planning, right? In execution, um, problem solving, right? It's a lot more responsibility, even being a coordinator. And even then, it's still a big jump from being a coordinator to a head coach, and not a lot of coaches can do that jump, right? So I think that would just be asking a lot for him to jump from running backs coach to there. But down the line, um, I wouldn't mind. That wouldn't be something that I'll be against. I could see Mark Hart having one of those situations where he left Michigan to probably get kind of cut his teeth somewhere as a coordinator, or possibly maybe a head coach at a MAC school, or somewhere else, kind of cut his teeth a little bit, and then coming back to Michigan at some point in the future, 10, 20 years from now, whatever it is. Then I think he'll be a one of those home run type hires potentially based on how he does. But as of now, it's way too premature. Way too premature.
yeah. I agree.
I don't love anybody internally, to be quite frank with you. I even though I know that it's best to keep someone internally because you want to keep that cohesiveness, and to keep the culture that's there already already. But you know experience matters, man. And I just, especially in college, NFL, to me, the NFL, there's nowhere near as much hand holding, because you're dealing with professionals. So NFL is really more of, I think head coaches in NFL and college have very different jobs, right?
Hmm.
And I think it's easier for a younger guy, a quote unquote inexperienced guy in terms of a lot of coordinator, head coaching experience, to jump to be a head coach, because they can insulate them. For one, it's not much as day to day things you have to deal with. and it is really singular focused, really on a week to week basis, right? You know, who's handling player acquisition and changes? That's the GM, right? You know,
Hmm.
you're literally singly focused on a week to week basis on their opponent, right? So I think it's easier, and you can also insulate yourself with staffing that can help you with that. As opposed to college, it's a lot more to me that's on your plate, especially on a day to day basis. So that's where I'm really not feeling, anybody who's inexperienced.
Yeah. And if I'm Tepper, I mean, I don't know, man. The like his resume is his resume. That you're not going to change. What his numbers show, but the 49ers weren't upset that he left. Like you know what I mean? Like he's got that tendency to there's a 4-year window where it's like, all right, man, like this is cool. Like think about that. Like his first 3 years they go to the NFC Championship, Super Bowl, and NFC Championship, and you gladly let that coach go. Like you know what I mean? Like I wouldn't be in a hurry to
Well,
hire Jim Harbaugh.
he's
I,
not
I
doing a
think he's
great job. That
successful.
coach is doing a great job in Washington right now, but that's a topic for another day.
Well, you said the coach in Washington.
Were you referring to Ron Rivera?
No, I was referring to Carolina Panthers.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Having
I'm
the
sorry.
conversation with Jim. It
Yeah.
just and maybe
Well,
York's got some culpability in that relationship and all that good stuff, but I don't know, man. And also, it's been a long time since he's coached in the NFL. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
it's been a long time
It's
since
a
he's
different
coached there.
game now. It's a
It
different
is.
game. It's especially from a head coaching standpoint. It's a younger man's game, man. I mean, I'm sure if you did like the average age of most new NFL hires, especially the last 3 or 4 years, it's probably going to be closer to around 36, 38 years old. Most of them are under their 40s, it seems like, or around 40. Jim's almost 60. He's 59. And I'm not trying to go in terms like a whole age discrimination thing, but I'm talking about in terms of ideas, um, uh, being fresh into it's a younger man's game. It just is what it is. And not saying that teams would purposely omit him because of his age, but I think number one, it'll be his style, right? It's just not conducive to what you see that where the game is going, right? So, um, man, yeah, GOJ Urban found out the hard way.
Well,
Yeah, I mean,
Urban is not
now
like
he's a totally
said
different guy,
remove him
totally
out of
different
this whole
reasons,
yeah. It
right? But
was a
I'm just
nightmare.
saying that it can be especially as far removed as he is. What was his last year? 2014.
14, was it?
Yeah, because
Yeah.
first year in Michigan was 15. I mean, the game's changed a lot in 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
9 years now going on. So, um, and I think owners and GMs recognize that, um, and he'll get a call just from a respect standpoint, and he's a name, but I think for a guy like David Tepper, that's part of the intrigue, right? He's a name. He's a name to bring some credibility in terms of a new hire. But their biggest problem is not to me. I mean, I think Steele Wilkes has done a really good job, and I know it's not NFL channel, but I think their biggest problem is quarterback. And that's just it. But whatever. We'll see, guys. I see some of you saying that we're always negative. I'm used to it.
Whatever.
We can't make you all
Whatever.
happy, guys. If you think we're always negative, but you're not listening to the words that we're saying,
That's fine. You can
um,
think I'm negative. I don't care. That's fine.
you're not
I'm going to
negative,
talk
buddy.
about your
You're not
quarterback throwing
negative.
two
You're
pick
not
sixes.
negative. Don't worry about
Sorry.
it.
That's
You're
life.
not negative, buddy. You're not. No, we're not negative. We
If
try to
CJ
give a.
Stroud threw two pick sixes, our
He's
channel
getting
would be
hammered.
people would be jumping all over
Trolling,
him. Exactly.
trolling, calling him
So
trash, calling him
because he's your guy
overrated.
doesn't mean he's above reproach.
If CJ had that kind of performance, our fan base would be calling him overrated, trash. He lost draft stock. Uh, he got exposed. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It'll be all these
Yes.
things thrown at him. But
Yes.
because it's JJ, it's like, oh, well, coaching staff failed him. Oh, well, he's just inexperienced. Oh, well, he did this in the second half. It's like, yeah, I mean, the good
A pick
goes with the
six is in
bad.
that second half too. There's
Yeah,
one in
yes,
he
yes.
was very
Critically,
balanced.
when
One in
you were
each
on
half.
your way back,
Yep.
into that game, it all goes hand in hand. And just because someone does things well in the game doesn't mean you omit the bad, right? It goes hand in hand. And best believe when the bad is, I'll say this one last time, when the bad is it results in direct points for the other team. That's not just bad. That's catastrophic. Okay, it's not like he had like, oh, well, he just had a bad passing percentage. He was 22 for 40, like Max Duggan was at a certain point, or something like that, right? He was just and if he missed some throws. No, he wasn't just missing throws. He was throwing it to the other team that was turning into points. Okay, guys, like that's catastrophic. All
It
right,
is.
and it's okay to say for one day, one game, he played bad. He did some things well, and you could say someone played bad and they still think did some things well in the game, right? But overall, when you kind of weigh it all out, you hurt your team to me more than you helped them, right? You put them in a hole. And then as they were coming out that hole and you were a big part of that, you did something in the second half to put them back in another hole, right? And it was not all your fault defensively. It was a total breakdown. But it's okay to admit those things and say, you know what? The kid has to get better. I think he can't get better. And he will need to get better if that's not going to repeat itself. And I'll leave it there.
I believe that is it for us. Oof. We will be back next week, same time, 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And at that point, we will have a national champion. So, yeah.
Oh,
we'll
great.
talk
Salt in the
about
wound, huh?
that. It's true. It's true. So,
Peace, guys.
that's it for us. Peace.